turn to something else. Just let it turn to something else, okay?
Hello, hello, I'm Katie, and welcome to Retromade, your pop culture rewind. Let's take another trip down memory lane. Today, we travel back to August of 1984 to discuss a military-style action thriller starring Patrick Swayze and many other familiar faces in Red Dawn. I'm delighted to have Dr. Darian Parker with me today. Dr. Parker is the co-owner of Epic Leisure Management, the owner of Parker Personal Training, and the host of Dr. D's Social Network podcast. And I was actually even honored to guest on that podcast to talk all things 80s. Darian, thank you so much for joining me. Tell us more about you and your show.
Well, thank you for having me, Katie. I really appreciate it. And I think we connected really well on my show because I have a segment every couple of weeks where it's called Arbiters of Bad Taste. It's actually just kind of a play. It's a good thing about 80s movies that may be obscure or that we just loved. It's a friend of mine when I do that as part of my podcast universe. And it's just a good, fun time to talk about the movies that influenced us during the 80s and how that made us feel, and then actually how that kind of extrapolates to our current life. You know, when you watch a movie when you're 10, it's different than when you're like 40. You get a lot different themes out of it, clearly.
Indeed.
And Red Dawn was one of those movies with that. But yeah, my podcast is just all over the place, lots of different people, different walks of life. And while fitness is my profession, I like to do a lot of other things. And my podcast is just kind of my canvas for painting and understanding all the different things that happen in life.
That is a really great way to put it. And I very much enjoy the variety that you have on your show. But I will say a particular note is the Arbiters of Bad Taste. That's great. So I hope everyone checks it out. Let's get into that retro frame of mind, speaking of, by opening the time capsule from August 1984. So I have vague memories of some of these things because I was pretty small at the time, but it appears to be a huge season for your primetime soaps of the 80s, wealth and excess. That kind of seems to be what was happening at the time. So according to Nielsen ratings from the 83 to 84 season, the top shows were Dallas, Dynasty, The A-Team, Simon and Simon. Had you heard of Simon and Simon before?
Yes, I've heard of Simon and Simon. I was a big A-Team person, very much in the A-Team.
Yeah, so Simon and Simon, you had been familiar with it. I was not.
Yes, I was. I mean, I didn't watch much of it, but I was big A-Team. I was all about the A-Team because Mr. T was my guy. Back then, I was totally into that time period. And then the soap operas, my mom watched all of those, Dynasty, Dallas, and I caught a few myself, actually.
There's a few more. So so for viewers that or listeners who don't know what Simon and Simon was, I didn't either. It was a crime drama show revolving around polar opposite Simon brothers that run a private investigating agency in San Diego during the 80s. And their contrasting approaches to, you know, how they approach things led to lots of personality conflicts. And, you know, I suppose comedy ensues.
Yeah.
But we also have, so the A-Team, then also Magnum P.I. Did you watch Magnum P.I.?
Magnum P.I., Tom Selleck, for sure. Definitely check that out.
That mustache. And didn't he have a super cool car too?
Very super cool car. I think the mustache was like the big thing. Like, he had this big bushy mustache. It's kind of like Tom Selleck's like signature look is that mustache and everything he's done. You know.
Yeah, agreed. It is his signature. The A-Team I'm familiar with, but honestly, I don't know if I've seen an episode. But Mr. T will forever be Clubber Lang to me from the Rocky series. You know,
on my show, I reviewed Rocky 3. And we talked extensively about Clubber Lang. And, you know, maybe the most famous line of that movie is, "What's your prediction?"
Pain. Oh, it's so good. His one-liners are epic. in that. He's just got a presence, Mr. T. Yeah.
Yes.
Then there's also in the top primetime. So yeah, all these soaps. Falcon Crest, another soap. Kate and Allie was actually one of the few like sitcoms, and I vaguely remember this with Jane Curtin. Did you watch that?
No, this one escapes me. I don't remember this one
It
actually.
was like two single moms. I think maybe they'd been divorced or perhaps widowed, and they live together. They share a house with them and their kids. I can sort of, I feel like I watched it, but I'm not describing it very well. And I don't remember which, if Jane Curtin was Kate or Allie. Listeners, please tell me if you watched Kate and Allie. Then rounding out the top Nielsen rated shows, Hotel. Had you heard of Hotel?
Hotel? What's that?
Yeah, it's another primetime soap. This one, let's see, it was produced by Aaron Spelling, and it's
Okay.
set in a fictitious San Francisco hotel following the activities of the guests and the lives of the staff. That actually kind of sounds interesting, but I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah. I
Cagney
definitely
and
never heard
Lacey.
of that, but Aaron Spelling has done a lot of. I actually just watched a show that was all about. It's like Dark Side of the '90s, and it was all about
Oh.
like a lot of shows that came out under Aaron Spelling, and this one Teens for TV. It was a whole thing, but it just made me think of that.
Yeah, he did a lot of teen dramas, like 90210 was the big one that I remember. But yeah,
Yes.
yeah. hmm
Yeah,
That
there was
sounds
a huge
interesting.
amount of them. Yeah, it's really good. It just takes you on the rewind machine. You're like, "Oh, I
hmm
didn't realize this was as big as it was, the Party of Five and all these
Oh,
things."
yeah. Yeah. Aaron Spelling. Wow. Knots Landing was yet another. I'd heard of that one at least, but I've never seen it. I mean, the vast majority of these are these primetime soaps, and this was a spinoff of Dallas, apparently, centered around the lives of four married couples in an LA suburb. So 1983, big year for soap operas.
Yeah, soap operas were huge. I mean, I remember my mom especially watching all those different shows. I saw a few of them here and there, but it was definitely like I remember it. Even Knots Landing, I remember that as well because my mom was so into that stuff.
Yeah, because there was also, I feel like it was also the kind of the height of the daytime soap opera as well. So
Yes.
I guess the housewives of the day got their fill of soap operas.
That's right.
Did you watch Saturday morning cartoons at this time?
Yes, I was deeply into Voltron, deeply into Voltron, and I can remember Transformers was Saturday. This
hmm
probably was Saturday too. And then there was like, gosh, I can't remember. It was like Silver Hawks, something like that. I mean, I was into a lot of different Saturday
Yeah.
morning shows.
It looks like the ones for this particular season, some of the big ones was Snorks. I've heard of it, but I hadn't seen it. I'm pretty little, so Smurfs, of course, awesome.
Sing your happy song. La 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 la, Smurf the whole day long. Smurf along with me.
Please tell me you liked the
Yeah,
Smurfs.
I loved Smurfs. I was all over that. Yeah.
Muppet Babies, Alvin and the Chipmunks. I remember
Yes.
really liking that. Theodore and Simon, Bugs Bunny and the Roadrunner Show, and then on Sundays, the Captain Kangaroo. I've never seen Captain Kangaroo. Have you?
I never watched it. I've heard of it like you, but I definitely never watched it.
Okay. And then midday, right up your alley, is there was a show just called Mr. T. I don't know if it was a cartoon or if it was like a
Really?
live action. Yeah,
Huh.
this
I wonder
season,
why I didn't see that. Huh,
Mr. T.
maybe it didn't last that long. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, that is the thing. In doing this show, I have learned that especially cartoons, there were a lot of them that were run for one season.
Oh, I
So
see.
yeah, selling us toys and stuff. Also, The Incredible Hulk. I
Yes.
loved that show with Lou Ferrigno.
Loved it. I watched it too. Most definitely.
I I need to maybe try and find that. I have good memories of it. I wonder if it's actually good or not. You know what I mean?
I'm not sure
By
it's
that?
good, honestly,
Yeah.
thinking back. I don't think it's good. I have to
Prob-
I watched some clips of it on YouTube not that long ago, and I was like, wow, this isn't that great as an adult.
That doesn't surprise me. I feel like that happens a fair amount when I revisit things. And then
Yeah.
American Bandstand is another midday show in like around the early 80s. Did you watch that?
I did watch that. Yeah. I was a big TV viewer. I mean, I couldn't get enough of TV.
I really liked TV too, but I somehow missed American Bandstand. Or were you like more into wrestling at like around this time?
All of it. I feel
Yeah.
like most of this stuff I was into. Like, but there's some of it like the hotel and just Mr. T. I'm like, how did I miss that? Maybe it was just timing, but it just came and went. But a lot of the stuff you're mentioning, I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely watched it, at least a couple times.
Yep. For sure. So the top 10 billboards this week is August 10th, 1984. Do you have any guesses? So August 1984, number one song. It's from a movie. I'd be shocked if you got it, but I thought maybe you'd have a guess.
I have no clue. Literally no clue.
Ghostbusters.
Oh.
From the Ghostbusters movie. It's wild that song made it like it's a number one billboard.
How did that happen? Like, who was the artist? Was it like Roy Parker Jr. or something like that, or
Ray Parker Jr.?
Ray Parker Jr. Yeah.
Good memory. Good recall on that. Yeah. But I mean, I guess it was just big, but the song is terrible. I mean, I don't know.
It's a stupid song.
Yeah.
There's nothing good about that song. It's great for the movie, but why would it be number one on the Billboard? It's great.
I feel like that happened a lot in the 80s too. Tons of stuff from the movies made it, kind of crossed into the top music charts too.
Like how many Kenny Loggins songs were
That's
in the Billboards?
Perfect example. Good call. Kenny Loggins. Yeah, I would never buy a Kenny Loggins album.
Ever. But he sold like crazy amounts of albums. It's unbelievable how many albums he sold.
Yeah. And it is from movies. Yeah.
From movies. Yeah. Like Top Gun and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. He had one, I think, for Over the Top too.
Oh, great. We reviewed that movie.
I know. I listened to it because I love it.
Oh, man.
I love it.
Love that movie.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, before we go down that rabbit hole, number two this week was Prince's When Doves Cry. That's
Love
valid. State of Shock by the Jacksons is number 3. I can't picture what this is.
Yes. I know the name. I think I would have to. There's a lot of bands during that time that I didn't remember their, I hear the song and I'm like, who actually, what's the name of it? And just wacky names of stuff,
Tina Turner's What's Love Got to Do with It is number 4. Oh my God, that song is so good. So good.
Tina, man. She just passed away not that long ago.
Yeah, like last month or so. Yeah, she was an icon.
Huge.
Of the 80s. And she was one where when I talked about in the 1981 episode with MTV being born, she was one of those artists that really, her career got a big resurgence by really taking hold of the video genre. And so in the 80s, she got a big resurgence.
Big with Mad Max, too, I think, was like another thing for Tina Turner. And
yeah, good call.
Another Hero. I mean, just some big songs,
Elton John has the number 5 song with Sad Songs.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why I can't picture that either. Then 6 is Stuck on You by Lionel Richie. I was never a Lionel Richie fan. I don't know what it is about him. That
funny?
Sound isn't
I'm gonna
for me.
say it isn't for me either. Honestly, my father-in-law literally loves Lionel Richie. And weird story, he used to listen to it when he was a truck driver, and he used to listen to Lionel Richie all the time during his truck drives. But I honestly didn't think he could sing that well. I know this sounds bad, but I'm like, I don't know. It's this. I never liked Dancing on the Ceiling. I just thought, it seems cheesy to me.
Yeah, same. Yeah, we're on the same page there. Yeah, I think he's kind of an overrated artist, in my opinion.
I agree. A lot of people would disagree with that, but I never saw it. I never.
Yeah, me
felt
neither.
That way.
But I do see Bruce Springsteen Dancing in the Dark, which is number 7.
Okay.
He was big in the early 80s, I feel like.
Huge.
Mhm.
Huge. Born to
And
Run was incredible.
yeah, yeah. That I think it's Dancing in the Dark is the video with Courtney Cox coming up on stage, like kind of the beginning of
Yeah.
her career. Number 9 is Infatuation by Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
And number 10 is Sunglasses at Night by Corey Hart. I hate this song.
Yeah.
I hate
That's
it.
such a bad song, but it's so catchy. Like
It
the music
is.
and stuff. It's bad though.
Yeah, it is bad. It's catchy but bad in a bad
Yeah.
way. Yeah. Yeah, so that
Yeah.
rounds out the music. The news and events for August of 1984. There's a lot of Olympics stuff. So I
Okay.
think it was in
This was in Los Angeles.
LA,
The Los
yeah.
Angeles Olympics. Yeah.
So there's a fair number of records. Mary Lou Retton scores a 10 for her final vault to win the individual all-around competition in LA and becomes the first American woman to win an Olympic gymnastics medal. Dude, really?
Wow.
84.
Why did it take that long?
I don't
Like,
know. I don't think I realized that. That's cool.
huh.
Carl Lewis wins. He's all over. Like he wins the
Yeah.
100 meter in 9.9 seconds, which is the first of 9 Olympic gold medals over 3 games. In this same games,
Yeah.
he also wins gold for long jump, the 200 meter, and the 4x100 meter relay. Carl Lewis, I actually remember in grade school hearing about him,
Yeah.
like
Love
learning
Carl
about
Lewis.
him.
I was a college track and field athlete, so I know all about it.
Yeah?
And that 84 Olympics was just amazing. And I remember thinking, I mean, I was really little, but I remember watching and thinking, man, as my parents loved watching it too. And I was so pumped when it came back to the United States in 1996, which was another great year, by the way. It was just an incredible year in Atlanta. And so
Yep.
I kind of always have those bookends for me with that.
I like that. The Olympics, I remember I have vivid memories of it being such an event because there wasn't so much, I guess there was only so many channels and this overtook
Yeah.
all of the like network channels. And
Yeah.
so as a world, collectively, we were watching the Olympics. And it's not as big of a deal, it seems like now.
Yeah, I think people are distracted. There's so many
Yeah.
other things going on. And it's kind of sad because,
It is.
these are athletes who toil in obscurity pretty much for most of the public. And then this is their shot. And it's really incredible. I mean, this past Olympics, I was pumped to watch like skateboarding and surfing and all these different things. It's just, getting exposed to things you don't see. But it was big time TV viewing in the 80s, the Olympics.
Mhm.
Gigantic.
Yeah. I especially, and I still do, I really like the ice skating and the gymnastics portions of the Olympics. Yeah. Well, let's see. Also, August of 1984 is Prince's Purple Rain album goes number 1.
Ooh.
And it stays there for guess how many weeks?
Oh, 30 weeks.
Close, 24 weeks. That's crazy.
Incredible. That's actually, and one of my
Like half of
favorite
the year.
albums.
Half of the year,
Yeah.
he was at number 1. Yeah,
That's an incredible album. Love me some Prince.
indeed. Yeah, he's another huge icon. IBM also releases their PC DOS version 3.0, 84 high tech, baby.
High tech.
Pete Rose returns to the Cincinnati Reds as a player and manager.
Yeah.
Were you a
remember that,
baseball
actually.
fan? You do
I was a
remember
huge
that?
baseball fan in the 80s. Not anymore, but I definitely remember that. And then obviously Pete Rose is very much known for gambling on baseball and never being accepted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, the whole deal. So Pete Rose was very big at one point in the news.
I remember hearing about that, but I don't recall him as a baseball player. I mean, I'm like 3 years old at this time, but does that happen? I guess the fact that he was a player and manager seemed of
That doesn't happen.
significance.
It's
Yeah.
very rare for something like that to happen. Yeah.
Richard Burton dies of a cerebral hemorrhage. He was only 58. And also Truman Capote dies of liver cancer at 59. So those two,
Wow.
in August of 84. And then, so Red Dawn, the movie we're going to be covering, was the number 3 box office. It was number 3 at the box office for August of 1984. But some of the other really big movie releases at the box office was, of course, Ghostbusters,
Yeah.
Purple Rain. I kind of forgot that was a movie.
I wasn't into that movie.
No,
No.
no.
I didn't think it was very good.
Tightrope, which I don't know what that is. Do you know what
Tightrope? What is that?
Yeah, you're like the encyclopedia of 80s movies. I thought maybe you'd know.
Oh man. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Who was in that? I mean,
Yeah, I should have looked that up, but it was like the number 4 at the box office this month.
wild.
Yeah, The Karate Kid, which was a
Yeah.
great movie of the 80s.
Great movie.
And then we have, I think, maybe one of your favorite movies, Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's probably my wife's favorite movie. And
Oh, really?
Spaceballs. Yeah, oh my gosh, like Revenge of the Nerds. I mean, talk about super classic movie. I mean, I have clients that still talk to me about that, like during our sessions. They like
Really?
quote. I was a big movie quoter. Like my mom always says, you and your brother, you just quote 80s movies and like stuff in movies. I'm like, there's just so many quotable lines from movies.
In the 80s,
But that was a big
especially.
one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and then rounding out like the top is Gremlins also. So August of 84
Oh
had some
man.
huge movies.
What a movie. I mean, I'm mixed on how the quality of the movie, but I remember as a child, I enjoyed it, you know?
I think I rewatched it this Halloween and I still thought it was pretty good. I think
Okay,
I
I'm gonna
really still
rewatch
like
that.
it. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Mhm.
rewatch it.
Quite good. Okay, so today's movie that we're going to be covering is 1984's Red Dawn, which features our everyman. So my first season, if you're unaware, is about the everymen, Kurt Russell and Patrick Swayze. Do you have any thoughts or fandoms that you want to share about either one of them?
Well, I think that Patrick Swayze, one, definitely gone too soon. I mean,
Indeed.
I was a big Swayze fan. Strangely enough, I wasn't that into Ghost. A lot of people love that movie. I don't know, it was something about it for me I wasn't that into, but
I can
a
see
lot
that.
of his catalog was great, all the way up through Tu Wong Fu. I mean, it's just like what range as an actor.
Oh,
Just incredible range. A very serious actor too.
mhm,
Very
mhm.
serious and very athletic. Like just could do a lot of different things. Tough, but also I think sensitive. Kind of the tough, sensitive. Could be both.
That's why we
So
love
that-
him. That's why I
Right,
think he
it's
has it.
great.
Yes, yes.
And Kurt Russell, amazing. I mean, Kurt Russell has done so many great movies. I actually was just reading up about him. Very interesting guy. Very
Mhm.
different type of guy.
Yeah.
But I can remember being a little kid and watching Big Trouble in Little China. I was really into that.
Me too.
Escape from New York after that was well before me, but it's like I watched that and I just thought it was like another like tough guy, funny
Yeah, super
too,
funny.
could play funny, could be like
Mhm.
an Overboard, could be so funny and endearing. And I think two iconic actors of that time, just super iconic. And Red Dawn, I just think is Swayze was amazing in that, and probably I think of interest is I think it was Charlie Sheen's first movie too, maybe or
It
one of the
was.
first
Yes,
movies.
it was. Yeah. Yeah. So I love how you teed up that both Patrick and Kurt are just like amazing actors.
Yes.
Do you think that they resemble each other at all?
Not necessarily, but I have to tell you, this is kind of weird. My business partner for one of my businesses looks exactly like Kurt Russell. I'm talking exactly.
Oh my God.
He literally gets, every time someone meets him, they go, you literally look like Kurt Russell. Like the eyes, the structure, everything.
Is he
It's
married? Can you
weird.
fix me up? No, I'm just kidding.
He is not married, by the way. He is single. But he literally has like his eyes and his structure. Like it's weird.
Oh,
It's
'cause-
very freaky.
well, that's awesome. First of all, like to see a real person
Like real
that
life.
looks so similar. Yeah. But you don't think they look alike? Yeah, men don't see it, but I mean, I just think they have a very similar look in their bone
Yeah.
structure and their hair and
Okay.
their builds and their every person kind of a
Yeah.
way. So, all right.
These are your
Okay.
guys. I can sense there's an attraction there. These are your guys.
Yeah, but I put them together for more that, I do think they both have that everyman quality, and they're both like very attractive, but not in a intimidating way,
I agree with that. Actually, I think with like anybody, for me, can I sit down and have a fun conversation, have a beer, cocktail with this person, whatever?
Yeah.
I feel like I could with those two. Like it'd be
Right.
fun. Like I could be in Roadhouse with
Yes.
Patrick Swayze, and he could be there standing at the bar. We could chat about whatever, Same thing with Kurt Russell,
Yep. That's a good way of putting it. Other guests have mentioned like the having a beer quality about
Yeah.
them. Yeah. So awesome. Well, we're about to get into the movie. Let's get into Red Dawn. Do you remember when you first saw it, and then you just recently revisited it? I
Yeah,
would guess.
for sure. I do remember watching it. I don't remember like exact moment in time during that time. I was like 6 or 7 when that came out. But I have a very vivid memory of just like the school, and in the beginning and stuff, and just the intensity. I think as an adult, that's what I remember. I can verbalize now as an adult, but not as a child. Is like the intensity of the movie. I felt like the intensity, and in many ways, it's a coming of age film and a political film and war. But it's just like I remember, like, wow, that would be weird. Like that would be really strange.
Yeah, intense is definitely fits it for sure. And it's actually kind of fitting that we're covering. So listeners, Darian he's now a Coloradan, and I am too. And this movie is set in Colorado. So it's kind of a perfect that we're talking
Isn't
about
that great?
Yeah. This was released August 10th, 1984. It was rated PG-13, which was this is the first movie to have that rating. I didn't know that.
What?
Yeah.
That is crazy.
First movie released with the MPAA PG-13 rating.
Wow.
Yeah. IMDb is a 6.3. The director is John Milius, who's known for Apocalypse Now and Conan the
Great.
Barbarian. And it totally makes sense. This movie has that feel for sure.
It really does. Yeah.
And so John Milius also wrote on this. The other is Kevin Reynolds, who directed Waterworld and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Wow.
Yeah, so he must be a Kevin Costner guy.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about those movies, honestly. These
I
days.
do remember really liking Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but I haven't watched it in 30 years. So,
Yeah.
who knows? So the cast, we of course have our Patrick Swayze,
That's
and
right.
he's Jed Eckert. C. Thomas Howell plays Robert, and there were 4 people in this movie that were also in The Outsiders.
I love The Outsiders.
That was 83. So just like a little while later. C. Thomas Howell obviously was in The Outsiders. Leah Thompson plays Erica in this movie. And as you mentioned, this is Charlie Sheen's first role. And he plays Matt, and he and Jed are brothers. So Charlie Sheen and Patrick Swayze are brothers in this movie. Darren Dalton plays Daryl, and he was also in The Outsiders. He played one of the Socs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you recognized him or not.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Jennifer Grey as Tony. And so there's lots of little winding threads in this movie. So obviously Patrick and Jennifer go on to star together in Dirty Dancing. And
classic.
I talked about in the Dirty Dancing episode, he really pushed for Jennifer to be in it, even though she didn't, they must not have had the best time with each other.
They didn't like each other.
Yeah.
No, I watched a whole documentary on this. It was contentious the whole time. Yeah.
And part of that is because Patrick stayed in character as this militant leader of the teenage group. So he acted sort of that way. And then I also read that John Milius, he gave the actors notes through Patrick Swayze, like to give to the cast. So
Really?
Patrick said that didn't make him very popular either.
Yeah.
You know, getting their directing
Yikes.
notes. Yeah. Let's see, who else do we have here? We have Brad Savage plays Danny. He's not otherwise well known. Same with Doug Toby as Aardvark. Ben Johnson plays Mr. Mason, and he apparently was like kind of a big deal in the stuntman and horse wrangling world. And he was a double for stars such as John Wayne, Gary Cooper, and James Stewart.
Okay.
And he actually won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in 1971's The Last Picture Show. I didn't recognize him, so I'm not, I've not seen The Last Picture Show. So, and then we have Harry Dean Stanton, who plays Jed and Matt's brother, Mr. Eckert. He's super well. Let's see, like, he was in Pretty in Pink, Escape from New York, Alien, The Avengers, The Green Mile. And I most recently recognized him he's in the TV series Big Love. Did you watch that?
Oh, Big Love. Yeah.
He was in that. Then we have Ron O'Neal, who plays Bella. He's best known for Superfly. Powers Booth, he's that Air Force colonel that gets shot down. His name is Andy, but I don't really remember them saying Andy. He's kind of known for playing bad guys. And so you all very much remember him. He won an Emmy for playing the cult leader Jim Jones.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I wonder if it was that made-for-TV movie. But
yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, I think it probably was. I just don't remember him doing that.
Same.
Like, different. Wow.
Yeah. Then Frank McRae, who I remember looking this up and seeing that he was in this movie, and then watching it and being like, "Oh, he's in it." Like, I'm in it.
Yeah, I'm like, Frank McRae's in that? I'm like,
he plays Mr. Teasdale at the teacher at the beginning.
Yeah. Okay.
And the reason that I know that name so well is because he's been in several Sylvester Stallone movies, including Rocky II. So I think he used to be a football player too, if I recall correctly.
It's crazy, the cast on this. Like, there's just so many vines and twisty turns of people. You're like, what? That person's in this? And then just incredible.
Indeed. The music was by, I'm probably going to pronounce this incorrectly, but Basil Polidoros. He is, I guess, known for his collaborations with John Milius, so that makes sense, as well as Paul Verhoeven. So, for example, Conan the Barbarian and RoboCop, he also did those.
Oh man, RoboCop.
Right?
Crazy.
In terms of how successful this was, revenue-wise, I have two very different figures. One source says 78 million and another source says 38 million. So those are
That's a big difference.
Big difference. And but on a $17 million budget. So either way, it doubled its money at least, but could potentially quadruple, depending on the source. So if you listeners or viewers have not seen Red Dawn, or if it's been several decades since you've seen it, here's a little synopsis. In the dawn of World War III, Soviet, Nicaraguan, and Cuban troops begin landing on the football field of a Colorado high school. In a few seconds, the paratroopers have attacked the school and sent a group of teenagers fleeing into the mountains. Armed only with hunting rifles, pistols, and bows and arrows, the teens struggle to survive the bitter winter, and the Soviet KGB patrols hunting for them. Eventually, trouble arises when they kill a group of Soviet soldiers on patrol in the highlands. Soon, they will wage their own guerrilla warfare against the invading Soviet troops under the banner of the Wolverines.
Wolverines.
Overall thoughts or favorite scenes? Like, what's your overall impression?
Oh, I'm going to tell you my favorite scene right off the bat here.
Okay.
Is towards the end. The end when the stings. And, it's so sad. And it's like the enemy understood at that point. It was like, okay, well, we could kill these guys. And they just look at each other. And I thought, I don't know why when I was that like a younger child, that really hit me hard. And as an adult now, I think this is what war and the emotion of war and the understanding on both sides that this is terrible. And there was some mercy there. I just remember that so much.
Yeah, that's a really good because they're gonna die. Like they both been
Yes.
shot, but he's
Yeah.
letting them go. Bella, I think, is the colonel's name that let them go, like die
Yeah.
in peace together. Right off the bat, spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's like the end.
Jed and Matt die, but they're together. Like
Yeah.
And that colonel that lets them go, the mercy that he shows them, he says, "Vaya con Dios" to them. And that is also what Johnny Utah says to Patrick Swayze's character in
That's
Point
right. Point Break. Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Amazing. But I think like that scene always hit me. I think overall my just general thoughts about the movie, it felt very different to me during that time. I think so much of what I was watching during that time was not like that in depth. There was like some serious acting that was happening. A lot of the 80s movies are just kind of funny and dumb
Mhm.
and just kind of comedic. And this was serious. This is a
Very
serious
serious,
movie.
yeah.
And I felt like the seriousness of it was a refreshing take for that time. I felt like of the opposite of like the excess and the wealth of those soap operas we were just talking about. It was
Yes.
something really that grabbed me about it. And there's others say I didn't like the Red Dawn remake, just so everyone knows. I wasn't that into it, man.
I was going to
With
ask you if
Chris
you saw
Hemsworth.
it.
I
I hadn't seen
just
it.
watched it. No, I
Okay.
didn't. I was like, it's just, I don't like the reboots of things. I'm just like, can we just let it be what it was? You know, come on.
I feel like everyone our age feels that same exact way. We don't want the
Yeah.
reboots. Yeah.
I don't want it at all.
Mm-mm.
Like,
Mm-mm. No, I actually guested on a show, another like 80s and 90s centered
mhm.
show. The task was to find a good one, and we couldn't.
I don't think
we
there is a
couldn't-
good
yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yes. Ended up finding things that were made in the 80s that were reboots of an older movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah.
My last episode was about Overboard, which is set in 1987.
Yeah.
So we were talking about fashion of and hairstyles of 87. So watching this again in the early 80s, it was such a stark difference to me to see how vastly different the fashion and hair was from the early to the late 80s.
80s was a crazy time for fashion.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
was just like all over the place. But yeah, I think a lot of the fashion and hair was so represented in movies and different characters. And
hmm
I think different people like wore that better than others. But some people, I think their style was really defined by the 80s.
Yeah.
And some people never left the 80s. Let's just put it that way.
That's true. Oh my God. That is so true. By the way, this movie somehow missed me. My 3-year-old self somehow missed this war-torn movie.
hmm
I actually hadn't seen it until yesterday.
Wow.
I know. I'm not
I
sure
mean, that's
why.
a different take
Yeah.
because like watching it when I probably ended up seeing it around 7, 8 years old, right around that time. And then watching it, I've watched it a couple times throughout my life. And I was just like, man, this is serious. I just kept thinking how serious this was. And also just the acting to me was excellent. It was just so good. And I just thought, man, this is like, you would be scared like that. Imagine you're a teenager and, these people are just parachuting onto wherever you're at. You're in school. I mean, it's insane.
High
The
school.
idea of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of hard for me to keep remembering. Like these kids are like they form their own little army,
It's like
which
a
is
militia
insane.
almost,
Yeah.
like basically. Yeah.
And it's very Rambo-esque. I took note of
Very.
like they're camouflaging and using
Yeah.
bows and arrows and like drinking deer blood and being up in the mountains. And
Yes.
like it felt very Rambo-y to me.
Yeah. I can't remember. Maybe this is terrible. I can't remember where it was. Was it supposed to take place in Colorado in the film? I can't remember, or was it somewhere else?
Calumet, Colorado is
Okay.
where it's set.
Okay.
It was actually filmed in New Mexico, though, but it is set in
Oh, that's
Colorado.
typical. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I actually
It's
was going to
never where it
ask
is.
you, I very much took note of like the Arapaho Forest sign because I've been
Yeah.
in Colorado for a while. I noticed those things. Also, there was a bumper sticker, the native, which is like a huge thing in Colorado. It just is like a green bumper sticker that says native. Have you seen those around now that you're here?
No, I haven't. I have not that. But I have to feel like I need to. Even after watching it recently again, I feel like any movie, you always learn something the more you watch it.
You do.
For
Yeah.
that. And I think like I just kept thinking like when I watched it when I was under 10, I didn't have like certain things I thought about. But now I think about like, how did these guys figure this stuff out?
Yeah.
Like how did it's like this survival, like I mean, you're in high school one second, the next you're out in the mountains. It's like, okay, if it was me, I would definitely it wouldn't be good. I'm telling you, it would not be good.
No,
It's
I was
like
thinking the same because the girls are like part of the militia. Like they're shooting
Yeah.
automatic rifles and throwing
Yeah.
grenades and like full on. And I'm like, no, I would have, no,
No. No. I
not
don't
for
think
me.
so.
Yeah, I've often joked with my friend group that I would be the worst survivalist. I would offer myself up to be eaten. Like just shoot me, and then you guys can like, yeah, like in an
You're
apocalyptic
done early.
situation.
Katie, you're
I
like, yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
I don't want to live through that. Mm-mm,
He was like, I'm not surviving. I'm not
mm-mm.
going to be uncomfortable. It's just, this is a sacrifice.
Yeah, for sure. But so because I hadn't seen this before, and I know it's a Milius film,
Yeah.
so I shouldn't have been shocked, I guess. But so first, like at first, we're shown we like open with this like beautiful, picturesque, like quaint small town. It's
Yes.
showing us adorable like small town mountain living. But then we're like immediately hit with like the
Immediately.
violence, So I I was like, oh, we're gonna kind of ease in, but nope. It hits you immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very quick. That's what I thought, the suddenness of it from this high school life, boom, right into survival.
Yeah,
It's not like,
Mr. Teasdale sees the paratroopers out his classroom window, goes out to like ask what the heck is going on. Before he can finish his sentence, he gets shot. And so that's we're like, oh wow. Okay.
it's all these I feel like the 80s was very good at this of not telling you the whole story, but you fill in the blanks yourself because there's a question of like World War III, how did they get here undetected like this, and all this stuff. Is a different time. Whereas like today's movies, I think they want to give you a lot of background to like a lot of stuff. They want to explain to the viewer like you're an idiot that you wouldn't know what was going on.
That is so
it's
true.
kind
Do you think we are idiots now though? Like, do you think we are dumber
Good
now?
question.
I mean,
Um,
do they have to spell it out for us nowadays?
I don't think they have to. I just think that like movies are so long now that they're like, okay, these are longer movies, so we'll add in a lot of background, which I don't mind background if the story, this is just me, if the story is kind of more mythological and it has kind of this fantastical element, I kind of like that. But sometimes it's good just for you to imagine like what happened here. And I also think a lot of 80s movies were not focused on sequels. They were not focused on sequels. It was like the effort was put into this one movie and let's wrap it type of thing.
Yes, which is better.
Much better.
If it happens to warrant a sequel, great, but don't plan.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good call. To like kind of to your point about filling in the blanks, like this, it's like this is like this alternate US history.
Yes.
And for me as a viewer now in 2023, an alternate future, like that's kind of what I saw the movie being, so it's like, because we don't ever learn from our historical mistakes.
Oh.
So like the propaganda over the loudspeakers, re-education camps, like using your friends and family to, become a spy and like give up your friends and family. And let's see, what else was there? Oh, just like firing squads, like making people
Firing squads. Oh,
dig your own
terrible
grave.
parts.
And
Yeah. Ooh.
yeah, so that's all in this movie. Like there's a lot.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot. And I feel like when you watch this movie and then you think of current times, you go, there's something strange about this feeling, about this movie.
Yeah, but
It's
yeah.
almost kind of like, not that we're there or anything, but there's enough chatter where you think, why haven't we figured this out? Like, I mean, I think, listen, the idea of an invading force invading the United States, that's a very different idea. Especially also, here's another thing.
Well, it happened in
Patriotism,
Ukraine, and the whole point is we don't want it to happen here.
we don't
Therefore,
want it to happen here.
that's why we need to support them there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like this very could happen. Like that's why
It
it's
could.
so prescient.
But what's interesting is if you think about the patriotism of this movie and the connection is different than the patriotism of today, right? That
Like,
patriotism of the
insanely different.
80s, it was a patriot, was in a lot of movies in the 80s. So,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
the
yeah.
idea of a patriot is you don't talk bad about America. We're all together about America. Love America. Everybody, no
Yes.
matter what you think, we're all in this together. We're Americans. The
Yes.
patriotism of today is a silo-based patriotism. It's very different. Has nothing to do with that other.
No, it's like kind of the opposite now.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's opposite. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it's domestic individualism in
Mhm.
many ways, and it's not a united patriotism.
It's
It's
not.
extremist patriotism.
Very extreme. That is something about the 80s. The 80s were very America. Yeah.
But not like today.
No.
Yeah.
No, yeah, you're right. It has when somebody says that now, it has a different feel to it. Yeah.
Right. When somebody flew the flag in the 80s, everybody felt connected to it, proud
Yeah.
about it. Not today. When someone does that or someone has gigantic, huge flag somewhere, your thoughts often go, maybe not everyone, they often go to like extreme patriotism, like extremist patriotism that is crazy ideology and siloed. It doesn't,
Very
you don't
much
think of
so.
America, this country of land of liberty and, the fruited plain. You don't think of this beautiful music in the song. You just think
No.
these are psychos.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's like we are the United States of
Yes.
America. But yeah,
yeah.
now we're the divided states of America.
It's very different. Patriotism in the 80s is so much different. And this
Very.
movie, I think, kind of personified that. Yeah.
Very much. I actually took note of yet another bumper sticker. And I think this is very Milius-y. There was a bumper sticker on somebody's car that says, "You can take my gun when you pry it from my cold, dead hand."
Yeah.
And that's literally what happened. The Russian
Yes.
guy, like the guy was dead, he killed him and took his gun.
Yep.
Yeah. I
Amazing.
took a special note of that. Thought
For
that was very
sure.
interesting. But then I gotta say, like, it was so scary and like this invasion, and there's re-education camps and people are being shot. But then I guess there was two areas where I had a hard time wrapping my head around. One is that they seem to come and go freely from the Mason households where they get the girl. That's where the girls come from. They're the granddaughters are being hidden, and they kind of keep them in the loop about like what's happening in the occupied area, give them food and weapons and stuff. They seem to just kind of go back and forth with no problem from that Mason's house.
Yeah.
And also they have like a leisurely talk with their dad through the fence at that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there was I didn't feel like a sense of danger or urgency somehow in those
No.
two situations, which I feel like there would be. Did you have any thoughts about that?
No, I felt very similar about it. There were some questionable things, I thought, which actually happens in a lot of 80s movies. You're like, was
Yeah,
that
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's like,
It wasn't. Is the answer.
Yeah. I think that just happens a lot in the 80s. And I was like, I chalked it up now to like, oh, this is an 80s thing. Like, this is, hey, we have a limited runtime here. We're going to skim through some of this stuff. It's like, but I also think it could also be part of the invasion part too. I think invaders in anything are not always well run too. And I think that is
That's
a
true.
theme that not always like okay, this invasion happens, whatever it is, sci-fi, alien invasion you think in your mind, or people invasion, human invasion. It's not always this well-oiled machine. There's a lot of things that are just not well done. So I think like if I wanted to argue that, I guess I could say, well, that's part of it. I just think it's an 80s thing. I
Yeah.
just kind of think.
That's a good way of explaining it for sure. Jennifer Grey. So I always was hearing about her in this movie because she was also in Dirty Dancing with Patrick.
Yeah.
We don't see much of her in the movie.
No.
She
Not
plays
at all.
Tony. She looks identical. I did note. So this is 83 Dirty Dancing, or this is 84. I'm sorry. Dirty Dancing is 87. I thought she looked identical, especially her hair. Like she's the same.
I thought the hair was exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's that kind of like curly hair deal that she had. And then when she's all dirty and stuff, and they were all like out there, and I was like, this just seems like if you watch those movies together, which I've done before, you're like, oh, this could be like her just moving from one set to the next, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Talking about like I have this weird like of the Soviet national anthem, the
Oh,
Soviet
really?
national anthem.
It's pretty, actually.
It is. And so
No,
I
it is.
recognized it in this movie immediately because of my bazillion viewings of Rocky IV.
Of course.
And
It's beautiful.
It really is a good song, but I'm like, oh, I feel like I shouldn't like it, you know?
I think it's just being objective about, you know, like, okay, like the melodies and things. I don't know the lyrics, but
Yeah.
it's sweeping, beautiful. Like, and actually in Rocky IV, it adds a lot of beauty and intensity to the when they're there, and Drago
Definitely.
and Rocky, and it's like this soaring, like boom thing, you know, like incredible, actually.
Yeah, it's very effective. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it makes you less of a patriot or whatever.
Okay, good.
I don't even know what it is today.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't know.
Now, I don't know if it was just the way that I watched it, but when they were speaking, I didn't have subtitles when they were speaking Russian or Spanish. Did you when you watched it?
No.
Okay. I didn't know if that was just the version I had. So that's really interesting then. We don't, unless you speak Russian and Spanish, there were several like actual conversations, not just a few words, but actual conversations in a foreign language that were not subtitled for us. Would you
I
think
actually kind of like it that way. I like it that way.
Okay.
Because if you want it to be reality, the people there would not know what they're saying.
Really good point.
And so for the audience, if you want to really make it feel like you're there and be immersed into it, you wouldn't know either. So knowing it almost means that you have a different, more intimate point of view than the actors did or whoever, you know. I just thought, man, I want to be where they're at. I want to experience their version of it. And so not knowing it, I never wanted to have that stuff on.
Yeah, I really like that take. Good point.
I guess some good ones every now and then. Okay.
Yeah, no, you're pretty solid. The plaque at the end, I don't know. The ending, like the very end. I'm not sure what I wanted. So at the very end, again, spoiler alert, Erica and Danny are the only ones that make it to the free zone.
Yeah.
And then they learn that we won the war. And there's a plaque about how their little teenage army helped win the war. And that's kind of how the movie ends. What are your thoughts about that?
I wasn't that into it.
Yeah, same.
Actually,
There's
I
something
think-
about it. I don't know.
I feel like also too, like the 80s was about like, this is a big patriotism talk I like this turning into. Like, but I feel like it was like America always wins. We're the best, yada, yada, yada. And I think sometimes a movie can be really effective when it doesn't play to that thing. And I'm sure maybe if they did focus testing and all that, maybe they thought about it. Maybe there's something research, but actually may have been more effective if America lost.
Oh God, that would have been probably more realistic.
Yeah.
Like way darker.
It's darker, yeah.
Yeah. Although Apocalypse Now is super dark. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just think it'd been like maybe more effective, but I mean, maybe audiences would have hated it because, especially It's like America wins. We're everything, But I think sometimes, even though I may not like that ending, like personally, I may not like that ending, but I think it may have been more jarring, much like movie. This is not '80s, but like Mystic River. Like, and Sean Penn's character, like at the end's at the parade and he's just smiling and it's just like, you want him to get caught. Why didn't he get caught? And that's that angst at the end. Even though I didn't like the ending, it actually was, at least it was a different take.
Better.
It was like, hey, not everyone gets caught all the time. And I think in this, like you went really dark with the whole invasion and stuff. But what if America didn't win? I mean, it's an alternate reality as it is. Why don't you just follow it through?
Yeah. There was something about it. I couldn't quite place what it was that I didn't like it, but I like your idea of, this whole thing is an alternate reality anyway.
Yeah.
So, I have a feeling though that they did test it because, I read in some trivia, there were some other areas where they tested and changed it based on test audiences. So I wonder if that's probably what happened. Hollywood,
I bet that was.
Hollywooded it up.
I think that's what it is. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with current movies is that, one, there's no original ideas. Two, I think the movie studios have too much input and the executives to the tone. They usurp the directors too much, it seems like. And then you get this very bad product.
Yeah, it's funny though, because it's like the changes, what they're doing is to make it more profitable, not necessarily better. And
yes.
It shows. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've never turned off more movies in my life than I have in this past decade.
Yeah, agreed.
But the 80s, that was never a thing for me. Everything was like almost very individual, lots of original programming. And just, even if it was just, the movie kind of bombed. It ended up becoming a cult classic
later. It's
so
much
later on. Yeah.
But like, I guess from the studio's mind, they're like, we don't care that it became a cult classic later. Like, we need our money now. We've got our shareholders, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. That's the problem now, is that most movies to me are just social media posts. They're not even like good movies. They're just like, well, we just put it out, and if this makes us a lot of money, we're going to do 2 or 3 more of them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how many Fast and
5 or 6
Furious
more
episodes can there be? And it's like 10, 11, 12 or something.
Yeah.
It's like, and you can just tell it's made, like, this sounds bad. I love Sylvester Stallone, and talk about the 80s. I mean, like, amazing. But there's another Expendables movie coming out. I just saw the trailer. I'm like, this is clearly for money. Like, this is terrible.
Well, like, I don't think he's in it very much either.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he's passing the torch to Jason Statham from the sounds of it in this movie. So, yeah, I mean, he is 77 years old, but still.
Man.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. Just like franchises don't need to be 20 pictures. It's like, I don't get it.
They don't, but like but I will defend there being 6 Rockies till I die.
That's a bit different. I mean, I feel like it's a bit different because here's the weird thing with Sly, though, is like, script writer. And the Rocky movies were all about heart and emotion that happen to have boxing in them for that. And something has turned with this Expendables. There's no part of that in that writing. I don't know what it is. It's kind of like if we talked about all these albums that came out and things during the 80s. And I was just talking to my wife about this other night. What happens when someone becomes super rich, a big-time celebrity, and their work starts suffering later in their career? It's like, well, okay, when you write Rambo and Rocky, you're trying to get on. You're so hungry to become noticed, and you pen your greatest work. But once you become wealthy and you have all these things, you have no trappings, like mostly everything's taken care of. What do you write about? What do you produce?
The worst thing that can happen to a writer: become civilized.
Right.
That's actually the worst thing that can happen to a fighter is you become civilized. That's from Rocky 3. But yeah, I mean, the same applies, right? Like they get very comfortable with where they are and they got to, I got to like maintain this level of wealth.
Yes.
And lifestyle, and they're not hungry anymore.
They're not hungry. So you don't make movies that have a lot of substance. And then, so it's like, so then they reboot Red Dawn, which we're talking about. and they put in, okay, let's put Miles Teller in this role. He's Charlie Sheen's role. And let's put Chris Hemsworth in Patrick Swayze's role. And it just, the juice is not there. It's
No, and
just
those
not
are both really good actors. Like I like both of
Correct.
them, but
Correct.
I have zero desire to see the 2012 Red Dawn. None.
Don't watch
So,
it. It'll
no.
disappoint you. Promise you.
No, like, and it's funny, not funny, but let's see, I've had this discussion with almost every episode so there's a Dirty Dancing reboot in the works.
No.
There's not a reboot, but like a sequel, which maybe wouldn't be as bad. There's Roadhouse is coming out sometime this year. There was a Point Breaks reboot.
Yeah.
There was an
No.
Overboard remake. There was this Red Dawn one. Let's see. I feel like I'm probably forgetting one, but like there was like a sequel to even Backdraft, and they're all terrible.
Oh, really?
All of the second versions were awful, apparently.
Oh, I love
never watched all of
Backdraft
them.
too.
Yeah.
I never watched. I love Backdraft. So good.
That was one of my first episodes, like the fourth one, maybe. So yeah,
Oh,
all these remakes.
I just think it's a problem. As Red Dawn is like stands alone,
Mhm.
and it's those movies that is both violent and poignant at the same time.
Yeah. That's Milius, I think. Like,
Yes.
that's his jam. So there's a fair amount of trivia. So the point that we were just talking about too, I also very much appreciate real graphics.
Yes.
And this film contains no computer graphic effects, chroma key, composites, or miniatures. All of the explosions are real and actual size.
It's amazing.
Mhm.
And my co-host on Arbiters of Bad Taste, this is a huge, huge pet peeve of his. He can't stand all the CGI and all the movies.
Same. I hate
And I
it.
feel the same about it. It's one thing I love about Christopher Nolan. He blows up real stuff in movies, and like he's very into that. And there's something about feeling like, man, it's actually cold out there. Like we
Yeah.
reviewed the movie Wind River,
Mm.
and that was one of the biggest things for us was like they look cold, like it's actually cold there. It's and it makes it. I think it elevates the acting when the actors are
Agreed.
actually in the element cold. I don't know. I'm sure they're not hungry, but maybe make them a little
Yeah.
hungry, maybe or something.
But a good actor can, yeah. Well,
summon
that's
it or
interesting.
something.
The cold, apparently this was super cold. Patrick Swayze
Yeah.
got frostbite during filming a
Oh.
movie. He's a few years after this, he said it still felt like someone shoving toothpicks up his fingernails when he got too cold. So freezing temperatures, often well below 0 Fahrenheit. And for the rest of the
Whoa.
world, that's negative 18 Celsius, 17.7, even dipping to negative 30 at times. So it was very cold. And
That is impressive.
Mhm.
Wow. I'm really impressed by that.
I know. I don't know. But Leah Thompson said that this was the best time that she's ever had on a movie. So despite it's being very cold, she had a blast making this
Even
movie.
better, Leah, than Back to the Future. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
I guess. Maybe, yeah. I don't know, man.
interesting.
The violence made the Guinness Book of World Records. Most acts of violence in any film up to that time, it perhaps surpassed now, but up until 1984, according to their calculations, 135 acts of violence per hour, which is 2.23 per minute. Did you feel like
Wow.
it felt like that?
No,
I didn't either.
definitely not. But I think John Wick has that beat in the first 10 minutes.
Probably, yeah.
Like-
up until the time of the
Yeah.
movie's making, it made the Guinness Book. Yeah, and like also to make everything feel more real, these actors all got real training from Green Berets. There was like an 8-week training course before the film started, which that's pretty intense.
I appreciate that. I feel like
Yeah.
Patrick Swayze probably reveled in that. Like
Oh.
he just seemed like he just loved intensity.
Does he'll like I talk about him, like everybody's probably sick of it, but like I talk about him in his book all the time because he doesn't do anything halfway. If he's gonna
No.
do something, he's gonna do it well and master it, and he does. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. He's a great dancer, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
I know, but he's like, classically trained dancer or something, if I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like he was in professional dance companies in New York.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. He had a great physique and was very athletic.
Yep.
And again, they just rest him. Just tragedy that he passed away so young. He had a lot more to give too. I felt like,
So much. I know. He was, yeah. Oh man. Now speaking of, so he died of pancreatic cancer, but so did Powers Booth and Ron O'Neal. So those three
What?
actors of this movie, all three of them passed from pancreatic cancer.
That is crazy. Wow.
Mhm. That's a rough one too.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty, and it's pretty much a death sentence. It's been on, when they
Mhm.
catch it, but usually it's caught late in the stages of it
Yeah.
normally. So that's the problem.
Let's see what else. Oh, do you know who they originally cast as Jed?
No,
Any
no,
guesses?
no. Man. I
It's
feel like I'm thinking of the actors of the time because
Yeah.
remember, like with Back to the Future was Eric Stoltz before
Mhm.
Michael J. Fox. I wonder if it was one of those type of things where it's like, oh, I know that guy, but I don't
You
know. I
do
actually don't know.
Emilio Estevez, who's
Oh,
Charlie
Charlie
Sheen's
Sheen's
actual brother.
brother.
They
Yeah,
because
yeah,
Jed and Matt are brothers on the movie. Yeah. Emilio was
yeah.
when I was watching this, man, those Estevez brothers sound the same.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a strange universe because like I was a big Charlie Sheen fan in the 80s movies and stuff, and then I just recently watched a thing about, when he went nuts for a little while
Mhm.
and he was talking about tiger blood and all that stuff, and
Yeah,
it was strange.
yeah, it is. Because I think a lot of people really liked him as an 80s actor too.
Yeah,
And so it's unfortunate that he's seemingly tainted his legacy a little bit by
yeah, yeah. I
going
mean,
off
I
the
was
deep
just a
end.
big fan of a lot like Platoon,
Mhm.
big Charlie Sheen fan of Platoon, and actually I've probably a movie a lot of people haven't seen, Men at Work. He was
Yeah.
in that, and I thought he was
Wa
awesome in that.
Wasn't that with Emilio Estevez?
Yeah, that was amazing. That was
Yeah.
incredible. I don't know
I
why. I
haven't
don't think
seen
a
it in a
lot of people
while.
have seen that movie. Like, but I always thought, man, this is a good movie. I don't know.
I remember liking it, but again, I think I
Yeah.
only saw it the one time. Jennifer Grey in Ferris Bueller.
Yeah. Oh, classic.
Mhm.
Classic. It's just weird to see these guys like I was recently watching, I think it was a TV show, but it was basically like Sackler, um, and the whole thing, Bueller, and I was like, he looks so old. Like, why does he look so old? I just remember in Ferris Bueller's Day Off and the youthfulness of all of the characters in that. And it's weird to see your 80s favorite actors be older people now. Like,
Mhm.
you're like, this is strange, you know?
It is. I don't like it.
No, I don't like it either. I'm
Yeah.
just like, and depending on how well they take care of themselves or not, it could be very rough.
Mhm.
And the look, you know.
Yeah. Actually, the guy who played Cameron was like 29 years old though when he played him, when he
Oh,
played a high
that's
schooler.
funny.
But that was common back in the day too. Like
Yeah.
straight up adult
Very
playing.
common. Actually, at 90210, all the people were not high schoolers. They were all the way up to like 24, 25, and then one of the characters was 29
Yeah. Yep.
for that. So it's just weird. They're like teen idols, but they're like not teenagers.
Yeah.
Grown people.
Very grown people playing teenagers. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. most
So
definitely.
we did talk about this being filmed in New Mexico and my love of Patrick Swayze. So I remember reading a lot about this in his book, but he fell in love with New Mexico while filming this movie. And then later he and his wife purchased a 7,200 plus acre ranch in
Jeez, did
New
he consult
Mexico.
with Val Kilmer about this? Another guy who loves New Mexico.
Oh, that's right. And he had a plane, like he had a plane that they back and forth.
Wow.
Because he had his pilot's license. So
Yeah. Wow, I didn't know that he moved there too. Because New Mexico is very famous for Val Kilmer being there, and actually, I think Julia Roberts has been there too, or a couple other people. Like,
I could see that.
yeah, like love New Mexico. I feel like it's always like they love New Mexico or like Idaho. Like
Mhm.
Sun Valley, Idaho or something, or Aspen. It's like these are the places a lot of celebrities end up going if they're not in Hollywood.
Yep. Or like one of their 5 houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Mexico, honestly, I'm going to be purely honest here. I've been through the entire state, not a fan. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either, but yeah, I mean, there
Sorry.
are parts of it that are all right, but yeah, I don't particularly love I guess I could see a ranch being really beautiful, but especially if you could still see the mountain. But
Yeah.
I don't love like the Southwest look, like all
Oh,
the
really?
adobe and stuff. Like that's not my
Okay.
favorite look. I like more
Yeah.
like
Like
mid-century modern-y.
contemporary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like Santa Fe but that's about it. And the rest, I don't know. It's just not a pretty place in general to me. I don't know. But they loved it. Apparently, Swayze loved it that much. 7,200 acres. That's a significant
Yeah,
commitment.
because they were horse people. Like they really liked just like having all this land and
Yeah.
there because he's like originally from Texas and so yeah, he's
Yeah.
kind of got that outdoorsiness to him as well.
Yeah. That actually makes a lot of sense. But see, though, I mean, like this level of almost contradiction in a person is truly beautiful.
Like a
Or
ballet
different, just like
dancer from Texas.
yeah, ballet
and yeah.
dancer from Texas, New Mexico, Hollywood icon, man's
Mhm.
man, whatever. Sensitive, strong. Like there's very few humans made of that stuff that I see.
I'm
Very
saying
few.
he's
Right?
spectacular.
You're all over this. I just
I'm
find that's
yeah,
a very rare quality in a
it
person.
is.
You know?
Mhm. Yeah. John Milius carried around a loaded pistol around set. I
Wow,
don't
he
think
would
I
have
don't
been great today.
he would have been. I don't like that. I would not feel comfortable if
No.
I was a cast member
Why
with
did
that.
they say why?
It's just who he is. He's just like that guy,
it's
I
just his
guess. Like
thing.
he's
He's one
just
of
like a
those
big
guys, yeah.
I think he's like a real big gun guy.
Oh,
I
like, okay.
think I feel like maybe I read that. So he's all about
Like you're on a
all
movie
about it.
set. What do you think's gonna happen on the movie set? Like some rogue actor is gonna tackle you or something?
I don't know.
Like-
Plus it's like a movie set, so there's plenty of like weaponry around.
I know, like I don't know. It's whatever. Like,
Yeah, somewhere I saw like the CIA or 2 CIA agents actually because of all the weapon like the tanks and everything. 2 CIA agents came to the set investigating reports of Russian tanks in the area, and they were relieved to find out that it was for a movie and,
dude, it's a
and not a real
movie.
invasion. Yeah.
It's like Patrick Swayze's here, okay? Like Charlie Sheen.
But like a lot of real military stuff, I was reading about like used the Wolverines, like used movie.
Okay.
Like during the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, some abandoned Russian tanks in Ukraine were spray painted with Wolverines across
Wow.
it in homage to the movie.
Yeah, they took that
And
movie serious.
yeah, and then there was let's see. When they caught Saddam Hussein, where was it? Red Dawn was the code name for the military operation that captured Saddam Hussein in 2003.
Whoa. Wow.
hmm
Think the time period, like how movies influence people so much. Like they just have like, especially 80s movies, and I think also 90s, but especially 80s movies, there's just something about them that sticks to your ribs. And they're just so memorable. There's just like a time. I actually think the 80s is a time in life that is so unique in the history of humans. This sounds ridiculous, I know, but I just think
No, it
it's like
doesn't
this
at all. I fully agree.
right? I just think there's something there was a shift in the 80s culturally in the time that just I feel like the shift was so gigantic from the 80s to where we are now. I just felt like more fun, honestly. And I really think that the fact that things were like VHS, you had to go to the movies, you had to wait a long time before something came out. Sequels weren't a big thing. The lack of the internet. I'm actually really happy that I did not have the internet during that time. I really
Same.
feel like I just think is like a lot of people who were without the internet before it came along. You have a special gift that people today will never attain. Like you have the ability to be bored, the ability to just
That's
see
huge.
life in a different way, and to be patient about things. It's okay if your show doesn't come out the next day. It's like,
Yeah, and that like dopamine hit of getting likes or
yeah,
whatever on your social media stuff, like
yeah,
having to deal with that teenager. I am part of it is special, so much so that there is a sub generation dub that
mm,
so people born between 1977 and 1983. So the
yeah,
cusp years of Gen X and millennial.
right,
Our sub generation is Zennial with an X, Z,
yeah,
or XENNIAL. And they say it's so specific because we had a analog childhood. We
hmm,
grew up without the internet, riding our bikes around, but then immediately as adults, we had we had a digital adulthood,
yeah,
and that's like very specific to. I'm technically a millennial, but I'm such an old soul. Like I
yeah,
much more um gravitate towards Gen X stuff.
yeah. Definitely a Gen Xer, and definitely in that little, I'm square in that.
You're in the
And
subgenre or sub. Yep,
78 was when I
me
was
too.
born. And it's just a special time we'll never get back. And if you were born in that time, you're around that time, you have a literally a superpower. Like you've
That is a
existed in
really
the
good way of
birth
putting
of
it.
something. You existed during the birth of something that's cataclysmic to change humans forever. But you existed also in a time when none of that was available, and you had to be resourceful. If you think about Gen X, what's the worst thing to say about Gen X? They were slackers. I mean, I'm not a slacker, but that was like the worst thing about the generation. Think about the generations after. They get punished constantly with
Yeah.
all these terrible negative things. Like
That's
you
so
could be the
true.
worst. Millennials, Gen Z, these people get crushed constantly for all these negative things. The worst thing about us, we were slackers, or we were latchkey kids.
Yeah.
It's like,
Which
it actually
made you
wasn't that
resourceful.
bad. Yeah,
It makes you resourceful. Yeah.
right. You actually had to figure out a lot of things on your own. You couldn't just look up this magical thing on a computer that told you everything. Like you actually had to use your brain. Like
Use your brain and be in silence, be in boredom, be like
yes,
the not being able to be bored was probably. I feel like anybody I'm not even a parent, but I feel like all the parents out there are like, oh my God, yes, like children
mhm,
cannot not be entertained.
yeah. Oh, completely. Like the other day, I was making my daughter some food. She's 12, and she said, "What are we going to do while we eat?" I said, "Nothing. We're going to look at each other. We're going to eat. And we're going to chat." And she goes, "Really? We're not going to watch like a show or movies?" I said, "No, you don't need to do that. Like, let's just talk. What are we going to talk about?" I'm like, "I don't know. We're just gonna. Why do we have to analyze this? Like,
Why do we
it's like,
analyze this? Just, I don't know. Or like car rides. I so vividly, can you imagine?
yeah,
I don't think children can even wrap their brains around going on like an 8-hour car ride
mhm,
somewhere without a device. We looked
yes.
out the window and counted
You
cows
look
and
out the
stuff.
window.
And we're
Yes.
like, look at that. We played we made up games, you know?
Yes. Yes. Resourcefulness, it serves you well in life. And I just think that's to me the 80s, especially the
Mhm.
early to mid 80s. You're in a time period where the movies were just either terrible or amazing. But even if they're terrible, they became cult classics. And you could actually watch something and you
Yeah.
could remember the lines of the movie and you weren't distracted by other stuff happening. Like you're in front of that TV or you're at that movie theater. Think about it now. If you're at a movie theater now, you're thinking about like putting your hand in your pocket. What's text me?
Oh,
These
yeah.
notifications, like, all that stuff needs to just like remove it. Removes that. Pay attention. And then you really ingest the movie for that. So I actually think we have a huge advantage. A lot of other people. And like, like you learn, like, remember talking on the phone? Sorry,
my
people.
gosh.
This is like, that's what you lived for, to go home and talk to someone on the phone, hoping that the line wasn't busy, and that someone else, it's just like having to just talk to people. I had to teach my daughter how to talk on the phone. We actually had a fake phone call just to like work on talking with each other.
That's so crazy. Yeah, if you liked a person, like a 12-year-old back in you'd have to call their home,
Yeah.
talk to their parent,
Parents.
and ask for that person. Can I please speak to
Yeah.
whoever?
Yeah. A
Yeah.
lot of like a lot of little courageous moments sprinkled throughout there, and riding your bike far away places. Now was it good? Like you didn't know where your kid was for like 10 hours in a day? That's not good. But that probably wasn't the
Hopefully they
best.
come home.
But maybe they'll show up. I mean, it's nicer now to have GPS, and I know where my daughter is when she's out and stuff. But I just think it's a time that may never ever be replicated ever again. Thank goodness I'm part of that time period.
I agree. You know what's like literally what emulates the vast change? So I just got home from a trip visiting a friend in Oregon. Great trip. She dropped me off. So I had like my phone was charging in her car. I get
Yeah.
all my bags. I go up to the desk to like check my bag in,
hmm
get my phone out to show them like my phone is
Yeah.
not. My phone is in her car
Yeah.
charging. And I'm like, I about had a hard time. I was like, so many things running through my head. Like, how am I even going to once I get home? I guess I'll have to figure out a taxi instead of Uber
Yeah. Right.
and like how I even contact her, like going, but I was like, I can't. And I stood out there waiting for a while, hoping she'd notice. And
hmm
then I was like, then it like occurred to me, like I had to accept that this is what's happening and just get on my, okay, I still got to get on this. So I started to go through security. And thankfully, it's a small airport, so I kept an eye out. Like I could still see the front door from security,
Yeah.
and I saw her. So I had just gone through
Aw.
security, and I raced back. But I had a mini heart attack,
Of course.
but that is so definitive of like how our phones are everything to us
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Exactly. And you just don't have to think that much. And this lack of thinking, it just makes me make it like the ultimate kids movies like the Goonies. And you think about the resourcefulness of the kids and, all the stuff they did during it. Like that was me. That's why so many people love that movie, because it was literally most people's 80s childhood, messing around, making up stuff, getting into trouble, riding bikes, trying to figure out stuff to do while your parents are at work and all that. And Red Dawn in many ways is like the teenage version of that, set in a wartime experience,
Good take. Really good take. That's so
It's
true.
just different. Yeah. All your friends are there with you. You have to be resourceful. Imagine like how weird that movie would be with phones.
No,
How
all
weird
the
would that be?
adventure movies of our childhood don't exist without. I mean, if there's it takes away all of the need for anything. If you have a phone,
exactly.
the problem is solved for you.
It's solved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
so I just think what a unique time in life, what an
Very.
incredible time in life, and what a great preparation. And I think it made for better adults. I'm just going to put it out there. It just made for better adults because you became an adult early when you grew up in this time.
Oh,
You had a
so
lot of
early.
responsibility. Whereas now, a lot of the kids, their term adulting, they delay adulthood as long as possible because they're just coddled. And they are fearful of responsibility versus like nothing was greater when you were 16 and you wanted to drive. Like that was like the driving force was independence, driving, finding out, getting out there, doing my own thing, hair,
I couldn't
wind
wait
going through
to
my
be an
hair.
adult.
Couldn't wait. It was like the
Yeah.
goal of your life to be able to drive and become an adult. Now it's like, I would like to be chauffeured around.
Yeah.
I really don't want to like be responsible for stuff. Literally, I hear this all the time.
No, it's so true. And I wonder now, because I often wonder about how people back in the day, like in the 80s, someone would on a movie or TV show would be like 30, but they looked like they were 50.
Yeah.
And similar, you know what I mean? And then when, now obviously part of it's because I'm old now, but when I see a 30-year-old now, they look like they're a baby still.
They're very, young looking.
So is it the delayed? Do you think that is there a correlation there?
I think just like people look younger, older now. Just more of an understanding of people are taking much better care of themselves, and people who have means. I think people who are understand, like, we're coming online more about what it means to take care of yourself, self
That's
care, and like,
healthy
hey,
food and
people are
stuff.
drinking less alcohol. They're eating much better, and there's obviously many exceptions to that, but
hmm
I just think like people are not like living hard the way they used to before. It's,
hmm
it's like, okay, I'm gonna get sleep. There was this whole thing in the 80s, 90s of like sleep when I die. It's like this whole
Yeah.
craziness. Now it's like I need to get my 7 to 9 hours.
hmm
I need to have less stress in my life. And I think a lot of that 80s mentality was like, if you think about kind of this Wall Street mentality, wealth excess, work yourself to the bone just to become wealthy, excess, excess, excess.
Yeah. I despise, also, I'm like a skeptic. Like, I'm a very, I don't know, I see things, but
Yeah.
like in the corporate, when somebody who's interviewing me or I see it in their job posting, we work hard, play hard. I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Like, that is not for,
Yeah.
like, I hate that term for some reason. It
Yeah.
really icks me.
Yeah. I think it's just a different, and I think you'll see humans will continue to look much younger at older ages throughout the course of that. People who are paying attention versus, like, if you think of people in the early 1900s, they could say, "Oh, this person's 25. They look like they're 60." I mean, they look so old. It's
Yes.
because life was so
So
hard.
hard.
It was
Yeah.
so hard. Literally, it was survival every day, and that takes a toll on a person's health and wellness. And it just, people aren't living like that in
hmm
developed countries anymore.
hmm
So it's just really interesting to see. But I just think we're in what a time. I'll talk about the 80s with anyone. And I know it's kind of a gadgety kind of period to a lot of people, but it's actually one of the greatest decades in human history. That's not even a joke. It really is.
I literally have a show called Retromade that is about the 80s and the 90s. But so
Mhm.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I think a lot of people of our generation do too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think just like the people who, the greatest generation back in the day, like they feel very similar about how
hmm
we feel about the 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that a lot of people today feel very similar about their generation, just from
Like
my
the newer
conversations.
generation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they just feel a lot of upheaval, getting screwed left and right with like the housing market and all these different things. Like they feel
hmm
like this isn't that great. Whereas
Yeah.
I never once thought that in the 80s. Never. Oh, and looking back, like, oh, that wasn't great. I was like, wow, that was really good. It was
hmm
like,
Perfect. Well, so Red Dawn, as we've discussed, is a departure from the movies that Retromade has covered so far with Kurt and Patrick. So in a way, it was kind of a nice change of scenery, and I can never get too much Patrick Swayze, but I'd rather not remain in this version of 1984. So we must now return to present day reality until the next Retromade episode. Darian, it was a pleasure to talk with you about 1984 and the interesting journey that on. Do you have any closing thoughts or places where we can view?
well, definitely at drdarianparker.com. Spell the doctor out. It's basically the main place you'll find anything me. And closing thoughts, just if you're listening to this and you were not born in that time period and you're part of a newer generation of people, I highly suggest you do what I do with my 12-year-old daughter. I've taken her back through all the 80s, great 80s movies. She knows almost every 80s movies we're talking about here. And she always says, I like 80s movies the best. And she's 12. And
I
she's
love
seen a
that
bunch
so
of
much.
movies currently too. But I said, hey, there's maybe not a better thing to introduce. Go watch Ghostbusters, okay? Right now, go watch Ghostbusters. Go watch Red Dawn, opposite type of movie. And I think you'll find there's a lot of heart. My buddy always says that the 80s movies have a lot of heart in them.
Mm,
Feels so much heart in these movies. Great actors. and lots of incredible themes that I think will make you think about your current life quite a bit.
That is so well said. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you all for listening or watching. Do you follow Retromade on Facebook? If not, head on over and do so. And I would love for you to offer a rating and a review. And please keep those YouTube likes and comments coming. Until next time, be kind. Rewind.